Alright, sitting at the bench here, and I took out the ROM board, and I did this yesterday actually, and I'm not going to explain everything that I've done here, but I did want to show you there's two different ROM boards. This one is the domestic ROM board, and it has two equal rows of ROMs, but each one is spaced out. This is was set up to use the ROMs that were in there before were these not EPROMs. They're just regular ROMs, I guess, or sometimes I think you call them PROMs, but the Gorf manual refers to these as ROMs and these as PROMs, but whatever. These are not erasable is the key, and they're what are they? 9332s. So I had already had a thread on Clove where I was trying to figure out how to get 2732s to replace these, because there's different dip switches here that control whether you can use whether you have 9332 ROMs in there or EPROMs 2532s. But there's been talk that you can supposedly put 2732s, which is more common chip than the 2532. Blah blah blah. Anyway, I use some dip switches here as my jumpers, so I can actually try different things. And let's see, I thought I printed out a piece of paper somewhere, but well, I might have to go find the piece of paper. But I started mapping out basically all the combinations and etc., and I could not get these 2732s. I'll link to the Clove thread that has a little bit more detail of all the tests I did. So, but I couldn't get these 2732s to work, even though I did also do a couple of jumpers for address line 11, which needs to be on pin 21. So can you see that? Yeah, a jumper there and a jumper there, and that combined with the not the dip switch, but the this dip switch is controlling the jumpers, trying to get the address lines and stuff to the right spot. So didn't work out. But I do have an extra board set, non-working completely, but the ROM board works fine. This is the foreign board set, and it's set up a little bit differently. You do have two rows of ROMs, but I think it's designed, I'm going to do some more research on this. I think it's designed because this second row is always going to be EPROM, and this first row can either be PROMs or EPROMs. So you can, like the dip switches X31 and X32, X32 I think controls the first row and X31 controls the second or something. And that second row is really for different languages. Like, for example, I have a German ROM in here, so Gorf can speak German to you, which is kind of cool, with dip switch settings, etc. So this is already 2532s. I'm going to use this to do some further testing and leave this alone for now, until I can definitely rule out the impossibility of using 2732s. So that's what I'm going to do. This is only version 1 though, and I do want to burn a set of 2532 ROMs this is version 1. I want to burn a set with version 2, and also we'll put in the Gorf test ROM. I think this is the one from Mark Spaeth. I think he improved on, I think Commander Dave is the guy that initially did it, maybe, but Mark made some slight improvements. So we're going to put that in and see if we can figure out if we have a memory issue. Version 2 of these ROMs also will test for RAM issues as well. So the test ROM will test for it, I believe, and so will version 2. The tests are a little bit different, so I figured I'd show them. We'll show both. I'll put version 2 ROMs in here. We'll go into test mode and see what that looks like. We'll put the Gorf test ROM in there and see what that looks like. Okay, actually, first I'm just going to put the 2532 test ROM in here. And even if this board was strapped for 9332s, you could put, I believe I've done it before, at least in my notes I said I've done it. You can put this in X1 position and the test ROM should work fine. If you were going to replace one of these regular ROMs, you know, these are called proms, but for the Gorf documentation, they reverse them for whatever reason. But if the board was strapped for these, you could still use this test ROM. But if you were going to replace them somewhere else, you would have to do a modification for pin 21. So to tie that high with the strapping. So I'm not going to cover all that in the video. I just figured I'll link to the thread that will cover the strapping information. All right, this isn't going to make sense sequentially because I got distracted with trying to make the 2732 ROMs work, and you know, I tried all different kinds of permutations and stuff like that and didn't get it to work. So then I tried to put the board back to a 9332 setup like you see here with the masked ROMs, and it also didn't work. And I've already figured out the problem. I broke out my Neo-Lock tester and I just started testing the RAMs just because it was easy to test them since they're socketed already, and I found about bad RAM. So what I'm going to do is put this RAM back in, this bad RAM, and then show you what the symptom is, and then so we actually have a recording of what the symptom is with a bad RAM, but good on a good ROM card. All right, so I got the ROM card with the bad RAM in it, in there, powered on, and let's see, what do we get? Nothing on the screen. Oh, am I in test mode? So that's kind of weird, right? I didn't notice that before doing that. But if I coin up and press play, nothing, huh? Well, it's acting a little bit different this time than what it did before. When I put it in test mode, it does that. So, but you don't get any code. Before, out of test mode, I was actually able to get it to say Gorf. So it kind of sounds like it's resetting. I obviously can't run the code. Yeah, so anyway, not a lot of indicators to tell you that it was a bad RAM. Weird that the symptoms were a little bit different. I was hoping I could get it to be exactly the same, but anyway, you saw what the symptoms were. Put the RAM in the Neo-Lock here, and it says it's bad. So just was a coincidence because that was driving me crazy. I spent hours trying to figure out the 2732s, and maybe I actually have it figured out correctly, but because I developed a bad RAM in the middle of that, you know, I wasn't able to get it working. So hopefully I'll be able to get the 2732s working. Okay, just to prove that it's working with the replacement RAM in there, and I still have this weird crap going on there. And also when you hit play.
Okay, player button, robot warriors, see and destroy the space cadet.
Yeah, you see those lines right there? I replaced the pattern board. I tried a different pattern board. It's not that. I tried...
Space cadet.
I also tried a different... I tried a different pattern board, and I also tried a different RAM board that I knew was working as well, and it didn't seem like it's the RAM or the ROM, so I don't know exactly what's causing it. All right, I figured I would wrap this up real quick because I got this working, and I'm going to prove it here in a second. But so back to what I was talking about earlier in the video, I basically took the Gorf ROM strapping information and made my own spreadsheet and kind of laid out what it should look like with 2732, and the key is you have to map address 11 over to dang, can you see that? There you go. Over to pin 16. And this is on cloth, so I'm not going to go through it. But that's the key is really you have to manually do that, and then also the only other difference is this jumper number 2. You want to actually ground out pin 18, which allows the chip enable to be low. So basically what I did is I put in these jumpers here. I put in dip switches for my jumper so I can easily flip it back and forth. I'm just going to leave it that. I pulled these off some spare boards I had, so it's always, sometimes if you have like junk boards and stuff, you know, and you can get some of these parts off, they come in handy, like for like right now. It, you know, made it a lot easier. And then the other thing is for that jumper, on pin 1 of XE31 to pin 16, and the same thing for XE32. And you can see that if I get out of the shadow there. There's XE32, XE31, and those jumper positions control the banks of ROMs that are right there. So anyway, it's really not that hard to modify this board to run 2732 ROMs. You can see there, those are 2732s, but it definitely was not stock. I mean, like, you couldn't do it by just changing these dip switches and stuff. So, or the jumpers, I mean. So, all right, where am I at? Yeah, let's go put it in the. Actually, I'll pause. I'll show you what the real. This is my the foreign board, where you can actually put in the German language or alternate language, and you can see that the board is slightly different. The jumper locations are called the same, XE31, like that, but this is what the jumper usually looks like. So instead of, you know, modifying this and, you know, cutting the jumpers off and then putting the, you know, piece of solder on it and redoing that, I just grabbed some dip switches like that and did it that way. So, all right, let's go put this boards in. We'll power it up. Hopefully, there we go. Cool. See, it works. But I still have whatever graphic issue I'm having going on there. I still have that. So maybe next I'll figure out where that loose yellow wire is. The other thing that was interesting is when I was messing with this, I was using the test ROM, and the test ROM is supposed to check for the static RAM as well as the DRAM, and it didn't say anything, but the static, it is kind of giving me some, the test ROM is giving me some errors though that is worth showing. So I might do that as well, as put the test ROM in there real quick and show you what, again, because it says check, when you press the trigger button, it was saying check chip U21 or something. Hey everybody, I'm jumping back into this ROM configuration thing just to be complete, I guess. X31, which is right here on the foreign, this is the foreign ROM board where you have 2 rows of where ROMs go, of sockets where ROMs go, and the second row is for the language ROM. And so X31 jumpers controls this row, the second row, and the X32 jumper controls the first row. And we've already proven that it works, and on the thread on clove I tested this, and these are 2532s and it works fine. And this is the way this board actually came configured with its built-in jumpers. But what we're going to do is actually, because there is actually, I believe, an error in the Gorf documentation for setting this board up for 9332s. And I don't even know if a 9332 was ever programmed for the foreign language, so we're just going to leave that one the same with X31 controlling it, so it stays the same. And then we're going to replace X32 with this dip switch here that is going to be wired for 9332 chips. I wanted to do this because I also want to test that you can put in a 2532 test ROM in a board strap for a 9332. So first things first, I'm going to remove that jumper, put in my dip switch here, and then remove all of these chips and put my 9332 chips in there, and we'll be right back. Okay, so this is straight from the manual here. X32, pin 1 is closed, 5 and 6 and 8. And that's what we have here. If I get out of the shadow, you can see pin 1 is closed, 5, 6, and 8. And I'll also hit the dip switch for the foreign language.
The dip switch is set on the game board
and you can see this switch 4 is flipped to on for foreign language. Let's turn this thing on. See what we get. All right, it works, and it's in German. And we still have our little graphics issue with this game board there.
Gorf.
Yeah. Long live Gorf. So. All right, so we know that that works. So the thing I'm going to do now is we're going to pull that board, and then I'm going to put in the 2532 ROM and test ROM. I have the test ROM in. It's a 2532, and I have the dip switches on X32 set the same. Now that I know more about this, I'm expecting this not to work because pin 21 needs to be high, I believe, on a 2532, and it needs to be low. And that's being controlled by the dip switches 3, 4, and 5 on this, whether it's grounded or not, pins 3 and 5. So I'm expecting this not to work, but let's find out. Yeah, you can't hear it, but you might not be able to hear it, but it is resetting. It just makes a faint boop, boop, boop like noise. So that does not work. If the board is strapped for 9332s, you can't put the 2532 test ROM in there, obviously. So wanted to come back and prove that. We now know that is you know. Okay, so if hopefully you guys can see that. So I just took out the ROM board real quick. So if I turn pin 5 off and pin 3 on, there we go. Like that. Pin 3 will now tie pin 21 high, and we ungrounded it by moving pin 5, jumper 5 off. So this should work. Let me put this back on, and we should get the test ROM now that is strapped for 2532. Nope, don't get it. I hear it resetting. Let me verify what. Obviously, I was going too fast and did not check my work. Look, I don't even have half the pins in the socket. So, I got to remove that and fix that real quick. Got it in there good. The chip is in there all good now. And I went back to the 9332 strapping. So, pin 1 is on. That takes address line 11 over to pin 18. And pin 5 is on, which grounds pin 21, which is needed for the 9332. So I'm expecting this not to work, as we saw before. Got it turned on. And we get the test ROM. So there we go. Let's see if the results are the same. So obviously what I initially said was correct. With the test ROM, you don't need it to be strapped for 2532. It can be strapped for either 9332 or 2532. Why that is, I'm not sure, because pin 21 is definitely grounded. Yeah, we get the same error, same results. So, all right, so we wrapped that up. I think that's it for the ROM stuff. I'm filming out of sequence and everything, so hopefully I can piece this all together and have it make some sense.